Richard, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
How are you?
I'm doing well.
I saw you the other night and you said that you have a theory that you should say yes to everything.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think it's really true. I mean, I do say that to be a little bit like provocative, I guess. But I think it's kind of true. Like I think big picture, uh it's one of the things that you try to cultivate as an artist or learn how to do is to be really open. Like in the studio, you want to be really open to kind of like what's actually happening and new things coming in. And so it's kind of like a process of always saying, trying to say yes when you're in the studio and like follow things where they go. But then I think in life like you want to be open to like looking at other art and you want to be open to just like experiences in life. So yeah, like when I said you should say yes to every group show, I kind of feel like that's just part of it. Like you should, as opportunities come up, for the most part, you should just be open to them, I think. And one reason for this is, I think, from a practical standpoint, is you don't always know what's in your best interest. Like, and sometimes you might think something isn't so great, but you might be wrong. Like, it might be really something really amazing might come out of it. There might, you don't know who's going to see what or what's going to come. So it's good to just have kind of like a openness and a kind of a humility about like what possible things could come out of whatever you decide to do. And also with an important thing with group shows, I think, is that they're really about building community more than anything else. Like it's an opportunity for people to see your work, for other artists, especially other artists, for other artists to see it, for you to see their work, just to see your work in their context, in the context of other people's work, to become friends. So I think you don't really want to miss out on those opportunities. And like I was saying, a lot of like younger artists, because now that I'm older, people will like kind of ask for advice, which I'm happy to like try to give as much as I can, but they'll ask like, should I do this group show or that group show? And I'm like, well, yeah, probably. Like no one's gonna a lot of what you do, no one notices. And you don't know what's really going to stick. So you might as well try. And like what you're going to get out of it is probably going to be better than any potential like downside. So yeah, I think it's a good idea to kind of say yes to things.
That's good. And it seems like it's just in terms of not only leading to other shows, but just connections, connecting with your peers,
Yeah.
connecting with other artists.
Right. Try to be open. I think it's kind of a fundamental part of being an artist is kind of trying to be open.
I saw you just the other night. I didn't expect to see you, and I had this in my mind that I was going to ask another friend who had an opening that night to be on on the podcast, and I saw you, and it was just a perfect moment. It was a perfect example of that, of just being open to it,
Yeah, I love that.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and often so many things that happen in the studio on a creative level too are outside of you could never predict it, right?
It's true. Right. So like learning to kind of if you can learn to be open to those things, you can really take advantage of them. And like that's part of what you want to do is to do ideally to do things that are kind of beyond what you already know. And one way to get to something kind of beyond is through mistakes or like kind of accidents. So all that stuff can be very helpful.
Relinquishing a bit of control.
Yeah. Right. Or just like understanding that you're not really that in control anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of an illusion that I mean, I don't know,
Oh yeah, no,
like the
100%.
whole
Yeah.
idea of like making decision that you're like going through life making decisions is a little bit of an illusion, I think. It's kind of true, but it's also kind of true. Like you're also being pushed in lots of directions and like, you kind of, you have your like genetic makeup and you have the way you were raised and you have the culture that you're in. So, yeah.
I can't remember who says this. My brother was telling me it might have been like Proust or somebody that you have free will up until the point where you do something and then you don't.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. Well, it's a very interesting question in art because I think especially in painting, people look at paintings as a as a like window in as like a window into your subconscious and as like evidence of you like making a series of decisions. So like it's like your personality and your decision making, but like to approach this in a way where you're not really sure you're like like that kind of questions decision making, I think is I don't know if that makes sense. But like if you think about like John Cage, John Cage is a really important artist for me. And that may not be obvious in the actual work, but like as far as like my thinking, um, you know,
How so?
I don't know, just somehow it's someone who's like always been very important to me. Like the way that he approached art and the way that he thought about it and the way that he made it is I think a huge inspiration.
Did he approach it with a sort of openness? I mean, he had a
Yeah.
structure, but
Yeah.
it was
Yeah,
still
like I mean in his in his work, like the whole world becomes music.
yeah, he
Like
really
that's
he
amazing.
really cracked it open.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've often thought about your work, especially I was working for a while going towards like starting with a central point and sort of radiating outward. And I
Yeah.
wonder if do you still work like that where the lines sort of converge onto a central.
Often. Yeah, that happens a lot in my work. And I don't really know why exactly. I think it's like it's important like that the whole process is very intuitive and I just kind of follow the work where it goes. So if there's like something I want to see or something I want to do, I just do it and I don't try to like come up with a justification ahead of time. But I do think there is this kind of it kind of references a kind of spiritual art, a kind of like and I think that for me in my work, it's not like a specific kind of spiritualism, I guess, but just this idea of something greater, like pointing to like a bigger space, like an idea that there could be something more somehow. Um, so I think it's maybe, I mean, this might be like a little bit of a cheesy thing to say, but it's kind of like a metaphor, I guess,
No,
in my
not at
work,
all. Yeah.
for something, for some like potential. But I mean, I don't really know. I just kind of do. I guess that there was something like in the work, there's something between these kind of like spiritual images and also like the whole history of abstraction, which comes out of spiritualism, but also like textiles. And it has like kind of like a quilt or like there's like a lot of like there was a kind of convergence of some of this like imagery that kind of really resonated with me. And I mean my background is, and it's funny how like as separated as I may be from this now as like a middle-aged man, it's still like the way that you're brought up as a kid and where you come from. I think especially for artists, I think artists never really get over their childhood. That's what really separates us from the rest of humanity, is that for us our childhood is alive. It's still right there. Those feelings, those images are. And I remember watching years ago a Louise Bourgeois documentary where she's recounting like a dinner party when she was like 4 years old or something, and she's like hiding under the table, and she's like crying as she's telling the story, and she's like 90 years old. And I'm like, yes, I think that's exactly what it's like to be an artist. For some reason, we don't get over our childhoods. Like most adults, they look at children as something kind of foreign and they like are like weirded out by them. But I think artists like okay, so the point of this is I got a little off track, but um I was raised in it by like a very religious family, very conservative, almost like separated from the rest of culture. And my dad was a preacher. So I think this kind of intense, kind of religious environment really affected me. And then also kind of the realization as an growing up that the whole world wasn't like that, and that there was other things going on, which was kind of a relief, but also kind of like jarring and shocking. And also my family is like kind of from the Appalachian area. And so there was a lot of like kind of like craft stuff that I grew up with, which I think kind of influenced my work too.
Like
But I didn't
textiles.
really realize that till later. But I think that whole kind of experience of those experiences I had when I was a kid are kind of the basis for some of the reasons why I was drawn to this kind of imagery.
Like quilts and so forth.
Yeah, like quilts, but also like little crochet doily, like lace
Mm.
doilies and like rag rugs and different things.
There's some
So
beautiful geometric imagery in a lot of
yeah,
religious.
right. I mean, that's the other thing is like one time one of my friends told me that and I thought this was really beautiful, that like every kind of art is always happening at every time through history. It just gets people look at like they only see certain things are kind of like in focus. So like in a sense, like like geometrical abstraction has like kind of always happened. It hasn't always been considered like fine art, but it's always been,
Maybe it's us. We're seeing things differently depending on the
yeah,
context that we're
a
in.
matter of perspective more than whether like something's happening or not. Yeah.
Yes, it's how we see it. I've been pondering that very same thing as I've been really on this Northern Renaissance thing lately. I just got back from Brussels. I went to
Oh yeah.
Bruges and Ghent and saw
Oh, amazing.
the Ghent altarpiece and all these other amazing
Yeah.
Memlings and so forth. But
From the
really,
very beginning of oil painting.
yeah, at the very beginning,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
you could argue that Van Eyck was really the first modern artist. He was the
Yeah.
first person that signed his paint, well, pretty much. I mean, I'm sure other people did it, but up until that point, they considered themselves to be craftsmen.
Yeah. Right. It's a huge
Yeah,
change.
it's a
Yeah.
huge change.
Yeah.
But they really, I think people always say, oh, when I mention this, are they off? People often say they didn't understand perspective, but I don't think that's true. I think that they're,
They had
yes,
different kind of different concerns, which are not necessarily better or worse. It's
yes.
just different. Yeah.
Yeah, the context was different,
Yeah.
different worldview and all this
Right.
stuff. I like what you say about all these things happening all the time. We just see it differently.
Yeah. Well, another piece of evidence to support this theory is that whenever something comes up in the art world, like some kind of movement or style or something, that people can always go back in the past and uncover artists, kind of overlooked artists who were doing it, which is also kind of more proof that everything is always happening, you know?
Every generation thinks they invented it.
Yeah.
You know, it's so fresh and new, but the best thing is going back and looking at something
And be like, oh, there was
historically.
someone in the 70s doing this,
Yeah.
someone in the 30s doing it, you know?
Yeah. 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 Which I think is actually it's comforting, right? We're part of a continuum.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's really true. It's the artists that came before you are kind of your like friends and companions on your journey.
You gain so much from looking at, you know, everybody that's come before.
Yeah,
So did you grow up in the South?
in Maryland, in the part of Maryland that's kind of near Pennsylvania. And I lived there till I was 9, and then my family moved to Texas. So I actually grew up in Texas and went to undergrad there, and then I moved to New York to go to grad school and just stayed
At Hunter? Is
at
that right?
Hunter College. Yeah,
Yes, yes. That's where you met Letha.
yeah. Letha and I
Yeah,
went to grad school together. Yeah.
that's right. So did you study painting in undergrad too?
Yes. When I started undergrad, I was not an artist. I came to art kind of late. Um, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't have like a focus. There wasn't anything I was like super good at. Um, and so when I graduated high school, I just went to community college. And then I started to make some friends who were like in their free time they would kind of dabble in art, like they'd sit around and get high and make paintings. And so I kind of started making paintings too, and I was like, oh, this is really fun. I got into it, and then one of my friends was moving to the local university, and he's like, you should just come to this, let's just go to this college. And I was like, okay, I'll come. And I started taking out student loans and going to this college, but just kind of studying general stuff. And I needed like in order to keep my student housing, I had to keep taking classes to get the student loans to cover the housing. So I had to take summer classes, but I wanted to kind of take something that I thought would be fun in the summer. So I signed up for a watercolor class and I got into the class, and the teacher was like, if you she's like, there's too many people signed up for this class. So if you don't have the prerequisites, like, let me know because you shouldn't be here. And I didn't have the prerequisites and I didn't tell her. And this was the 90s. So I guess it was harder to check or something. I don't know. But I just stayed, and I took the class and I loved it. And it was so much fun. And I totally got into it. And then at the final critique, like, she had us like line up our watercolors in the hallway and she went over what we'd done. And she was like, I could have kicked you out of this class at any time. And I was like, I know. And she said, well, I'm glad I didn't.
Oh
And
man.
I was like, I'm glad you didn't too. And then I changed my major to art and I went back and I took, all the basic classes that I was supposed to take. And I just love, and once I kind of found painting, it really kind of changed my life. I became much more focused. I did better in school. I, and it's kind of a gift that even though like I didn't really know how it was gonna work out. I knew that's what I wanted to do. And ever since like all that time, I always just knew that no matter what else I had to do, like if I had to have a job or like whatever, that was fine. But I knew that like art was what I wanted to do.
So you had that
So
realization in college after taking this watercolor
yeah.
class. It's not meditation, but it seems similar in terms of you're sort of turning off maybe the part of your brain that does the analytical
Yeah,
thinking.
there's a huge amount of my work that's like I kind of do without thinking. Like I set up activities for myself to kind of get lost in. But okay, so like for years people would be like, oh, it's so meditative, and I'd be like, no, it's not like meditation at all because I'm very engaged, like I'm actively like like stimulated and but it's because I didn't understand what meditation was. Like then someone explained to me that meditation is kind of like an active thing, and I was like, oh, I guess this is similar to that after all. So yeah, I would agree. But one thing I've had to learn to do in my work is this like constant shifting between like being absorbed in what I'm doing and almost like not thinking, just doing things, and then stopping and like thinking about it, almost as if I'm like someone else, like taking on the role of a viewer, especially in the paintings. Because one thing with the paintings, the kind of trick to the paintings has been doing a lot less. Um, not overworking things, not touching things more than they like, as little as doing as little as possible. And a lot of this means that often this means the painting is done before I think it'll be done. So I have to stop myself along the way, like over and over again and check. And also a lot of times the key to the painting is leaving them at a place that feels very awkward to me, like that feels unresolved or like really like bad almost, and that's kind of the trick to them.
How do you know when to step
Is
away? Do you
not
just
because if I try to fix them and take them to a place that feels comfortable, I kind of ruin them. It's like I just kind of kill them. um so this has been one of the things I've had to figure out over the years, is this kind of combination of kind of mindless procedural, like just giving myself a task and doing it, and then also just like being really aware of almost doing as little as possible. Like, and this has been an interesting thing too, if you think about like ego and free will and decision making, that like the more decisions I make, the worse the paintings get, and having to like give up on trying to make them good. Like also this is interesting too, like a lot of this is almost a cliche of being an artist, is that artists will tell you you have to give up on making good paintings. Like to make a good painting, you have to give up on the idea of making a good painting. And for years, I think it's because of my generation is very opposed to like cliches. Like this is our thing, like fighting against cliches. But one thing I had to realize was that the cliches are true, but the trick is they're true in a different way for each person. So it's like it is true that you have to like that I had to figure this out, but I had to figure out what this meant for me. So for me, it means doing a lot less, like giving up on the idea that I can like work something into like work it into submission or something. I just have to kind of like do it and accept it. And a lot of times I have to change the answer to the painting is to change the way I feel about it, which is weird too. Instead of trying to fix the painting, I just change myself and like come around to it.
how might you do that?
I don't know. It's kind of painful. A lot of times I'm like totally unhappy with my paintings and frustrated and like at first, and then like it settles down and then I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. And the funny thing is, as I go through this process, to everyone else it just looks like another one of my paintings. I feel like, oh yeah, that's fine, like that's nice. But to me it's just like, oh, like I can't believe I did this, it's the worst thing I've ever seen. But I've learned that that's really good, like that feeling is a good sign.
So it seems like the more you want something, the less, the further away you get from it.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
like if I went back into the paintings and tried to make them more like more feel more comfortable to me, like whenever I do that, it ruins them.
what would they look like? What is ruining?
It just like it's I don't know, it just doesn't it's it just doesn't like well, what happens in practice a lot of times when I try to fix paintings is there's no end to it. And they I end up kind of obliterating the whole thing and there's like literally nothing left. That's practically what happens. So
So you lose the structure.
you lose everything. Yeah, it
You
just
lose the
becomes
whole
like a
thing.
mud puddle.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, it seems like in your paintings there's such a beautiful balance of it's quite painterly. It's
Which
tight.
this is interesting too, because I didn't really start out as a painter. And I like I did start out in that watercolor class, but then when I started like making art, it was all um kind of like found objects and like stuff from the 99-cent store, and I would put things together and kind of build things out of it. And but then when I moved to New York, this work seemed very like New York is just so much more chaotic. And I was like, this work doesn't make sense to me anymore. And I went through this process of kind of simplifying it, where I would just take like one printed fabric and stretch it and paint on that. But even that seemed like kind of weird. Um, and I was like, why don't I just make a? It seems like I'm headed towards painting. Why can't I just like make a painting? So then I went through this whole process of figuring out how to just make a painting. But I still feel personally, and I think a lot of painters would agree with, I don't, well, I shouldn't put words in their mouth, but like people that are really into painting, I think when they look at my paintings, they can tell that I'm an artist who uses paint. A lot of like artists who are not painters think of me as a real painterly painter, but it's actually kind of not true. Like I use paint as a found object, in my opinion. For example, in my studio, I have the kind of paint I use. I have every single color it comes in, all 124 in alphabetical order. And before I make a painting, I lay them, I have them in these buckets, in these bins, and I lay them all out. And I just kind of randomly pick some colors, kind of, I mean, intuitively. Um, like I always use the same size brushes. I always use the same size canvases. A lot of times the imagery is kind of based just on like the edges and the support bars and like things that are given, the surface, the white of the canvas, the supports. Like those are the things I'm thinking. I kind of think of it as a found object, if that
It
makes sense.
sounds almost like a sculpture the way you describe it.
Well, to me, it's an image object. And both
Yes.
these things have to be equally important. And also, like sometimes in my mind, I think there's like a dial. Like if you turn it too far to one direction, it becomes like an image of something. And if you turn it too far to the other, it's just like an object. But you have to find a balance kind of in the middle where there's some kind of imagery happening, like some kind of space. Also, like in my mind, it's less about image and more about space, like creating a space, some sort of space. Um,
So is that space between image and object, perhaps?
no, I mean, what most people would consider the image to me is more about like kind of creating a little bit of space.
Hmm.
And also, this is part of why the paintings are often centered, because if you center something, it allows you to create a space that kind of goes in and out instead of a space that kind of goes past you. Like if instead of like a window where you're looking out onto a bit of something that's like going by, like if you center the imagery and you lock it into the sides, you create a space that's like coming out at you, in and out.
Or in, yeah.
Yeah, which is more of like a spiritual experience, I think, than like seeing like a landscape or like a seg. Like it also it and interestingly also it accentuates the fact that the painting is an object, because it's not like because it's like locking into the like my imagery almost always somehow like accentuates the edges, the edges and the corners and all of that. And I remember when I first started doing that in undergrad, like sometimes I would line things up, and one of my professors was like, "This just kills the composition," and it's true, it did. This is a great piece of advice for young artists and I try to remember to say this whenever I do studio visits with young artists. Whatever people complain about in your work, that's what you want to hold on to. Those are the things you're doing that are different. Like whatever people kind of like about your work, that's probably stuff they've seen. They like it because they're familiar with it. They've seen it in other people's work. That's not really you. whatever they kind of like are like stuck on, or they're like, that's weird, or I don't know how that works. That's you. And you have to like get rid of the other stuff and just focus on the thing that no one likes.
So for you,
And
it was
that's
this
like your
central.
path to success as an artist.
That's good. That's good. So for you, it was the central composition.
Well, kind of, yeah, yeah. It was, or kind of like
Yeah,
anti-compositional techniques in a way, like not. Well, I don't know if that's true. I don't know. Yeah, maybe.
I know what you're saying because traditionally, like they wouldn't teach you in school to do any sort of centralized composition for,
You should vary. Yeah, you should
yeah,
vary it.
yeah.
There needs, yeah.
They might try to work you around the space
But all
and
of that is really
yeah,
helpful too. I
yeah.
think, one of the great things about the school that I went to, the University of North Texas, is they had at the time, I mean, this was so long ago, they had like a, they had like a really great kind of fundamentals curriculum that kind of came out of the Bauhaus. And it was really like, it was so good. Like you learned so much about like design and drawing and color and all this stuff, and then you can decide whether to use it or not,
So
you
what
know.
were they teaching in that regard?
Just like all these like design classes where I can't remember exactly. I just remember like it was really great. It was a great education. It was also kind of an accident too. I just happened to be there. And I happened to discover art, and there happened to be a good program.
Yeah, you we're all
So
just
all of that was really,
that's how our lives are. As artists, we're so
yeah,
lucky all along the way. We have tremendous luck to be practicing artists at any, at any point. We're in a certain cultural context. We have the good fortune to have enough income to buy art supplies, or even to have the education to understand,
yeah,
the whole structure of it. Truly
mm,
amazing. And then on top of that, to get lucky and go to a school where you can actually gain all this knowledge and then apply that.
right,
So you were learning a lot of design things.
yeah,
And when you say Bauhaus is like modernist,
yeah, but like,
but
yeah, like design, like kind of like I feel like fundamentals of design, like value and
that's so useful.
like I can't remember all the stuff now, but yeah, I just remember there were a lot of classes where you had to like make these collages out of little pieces of colored paper, things like that. Yeah, and then another thing that's kind of interesting too is that when I went to Hunter all those years ago, there was a bunch of like color painters who were very concerned with color, and they made these paintings that were like squares of different colors, and I thought it was just horrible. Like I was really like, I just thought this is the most ridiculous thing ever, I just didn't like. I didn't get along well with any of the professors, and I didn't. I had a really bad time. Was dropped out. I didn't like it. But the crazy thing about it is my work has become so much about color. Like almost, I feel like my work is what it is, almost in spite of myself. It's like in spite of what I want, this is what it is. It's not. It's nothing I would have ever seen coming or guessed, or like I don't know. It's kind of weird.
That's amazing. Well, going back to just remaining open, it sounds like
Yeah.
you were
Yeah, I feel
sufficiently
like I
open.
followed it here.
And who knows where it's going to lead? That's the amazing thing
Yeah,
about it.
that's really true. It's true.
Yeah. If you knew, right? If you could predict it, it wouldn't be fun.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the journey. It's the journey and the process and the practice that's really what's important. That's what you're cultivating. That's what you work on. It's not the product is like the least important thing almost from the artist perspective, you know.
100%. Yeah, it's not it's still I mean the process is the thing that's living,
Yeah,
you
that's the
know.
thing you really have to protect
Yeah.
and cultivate and like work on and perfect, kind of
Yeah.
what you do, like the how you like. Oh, in the studio, I almost have like a ritual of like how I go, like what time I go in there, like what I do when I get in there, how I move, how I set things up, and everything is like so. Everything kind of I do the same thing. Like I kind of go through the motions. It's almost choreographed. Do the same. Like it's like, and there's the whole old saying that it's like mental illness to do the same thing over and over again but expect different results. But that's exactly kind of what you do as an artist, as a the kind. Well, it depends on what kind of artist you are, but like for someone who uses the same materials, like a painter does, I do the same things over and over again and get different results.
Well, there's so many possibilities in painting.
Yeah, it's true. And the
It's
more you try to simplify things, I'm always trying to like focus things and get the most out of the fewest elements, like get each element to do the most. But the more you try to simplify things, the more complicated it gets, the more kind of variables you discover and think of and notice. And it's like, I mean, a lot of times when I'm unhappy with a painting, it's because I realize it has more than it needs. Like there's more steps or more elements, or there's like two steps that kind of did the same thing and they kind of neutralize each other. And so that's, I'm always trying to like simplify. Like I feel like a great painting has like a very strong internal logic, where everything kind of like everything does like exactly what it needs to do for that painting. And nothing's extra, nothing's repeated. Um, I don't know. I don't know if that's like a very like old-fashioned kind of modernist approach to painting, but I feel like that's kind of like that's ideally what I'm looking for. And it's hard. It's hard. It's you know, um, it's hard to find.
I think if you look throughout history, that's kind of like if you see a painting, a really good painting, there's not one thing that's unnecessary.
Yeah. And then you put all this work into it and people are like, well, it's orange.
Yeah, yeah,
Or
of course.
something. That's what happens when you're an abstract
Yeah.
painter is people just like react to the color, which is kind of great too. I love that color has that power to like really like fundamentally like move people, but it's also frustrating too because there's so much more to it. Um,
Maybe you could walk us through the process of a painting.
Well, I like to paint early in the morning because I'm a morning person, and also because I make the paintings all at each painting is made in one sitting, and I kind of never know how long they're going to take. Some of them can take like up to 12 hours. Like the ones I'm working on these days don't really take that long, but I never really know for sure. So I'll if it's going to be a really long painting, sometimes I go to the studio the day before and set everything up. But usually what I do is I just get there like at like 6 in the morning or something, and I set up a canvas. I get my paint. My paints are like in these bins, and I take them down and lay them out. And but I'll have kind of thought about it for a few days. Like I paint like every maybe there's kind what I make a lot of work. But the reason I make a lot of work is because I've discovered that it improves the quality of all of the work if I work at a certain rate. If I work too slow, the ideas get out ahead of the actual physical paintings. So I have to make, in order for things to kind of flow, it's good for me to make about a painting every 3 days or so. So I'll make a painting and then like the next day, it just takes a lot out of me. So I'm kind of exhausted. But then the ideas will start coming, like I'll kind of start to, it'll kind of start and it'll kind of build. And then one morning I'll wake up and I'll kind of know what I want to do. So I go to the studio and I cover the first thing I do is I cover the canvas in white paint. So it's wet. And then in these paintings, my palette is like a piece of wax paper that I tape down to a table and I fill it up with paint and I take the wax paper and scrape it down the surface of the painting. So all the paint is already on the surface of the canvas. And then I take a paintbrush and just start making like little brush strokes all over the whole surface. And that moves the paint around. And so everything mixes and happens on the surface. So like kind of the trick in these paintings is how much I'm going to work the surface. Like how many colors do I need? How do I work? Like what directions do I move them in? What do I let happen? Like how kind of smoothed out or chunky is it? Um, so that's kind of what I've been working with in these paintings. And then a lot of times, then I like leave it and I'll like leave the studio so I don't overwork it and like come back and look at it later.
The same day or the next day.
Yeah, sometimes the same day, sometimes the
Yeah.
next day, sometimes in a couple days. If they don't work out, a lot of times, well, sometimes I scrape them down. Sometimes I scrape down a painting and then it ends up working in that state, kind of like half. It's happened several times. Like sometimes scraped down paintings are good. Um, but a lot of times what I do, I don't know right away, so they end up drying and then I paint over them. But that can also be really interesting too, because then you have like the texture somehow working against something else can like lead to new things, you know.
I feel like you're doing all the things they tell you not to do, which I like. You're always supposed to mix on the palette, not on the canvas.
Yeah, I never do that.
Yeah,
And
that's
yeah, I use the paint like right out of the tube too, like
yeah.
kind of like as a found like as a thing, you know?
Wow. Wow, that's well, now it's and now this is changing the way I see your work in this kind
Yeah.
like hearing about it. I love hearing about this process because it is surprising and I'm just kind of like, how does he I wonder, but I never suspected that you're painting from a wet ground and
Yeah.
then transferring, you say you put all the paint on
Yeah, so
the
like sometimes
yeah.
people think like I'm mixing all these different colors or something,
Yeah.
or that because, but I'm not. And
Yeah.
it's not. And even though like the whole like doing all the little brush strokes might seem tedious, it's something that kind of comes naturally. Like everything that I do are based on things that kind of come naturally to me. So to me, that's not tedious. It's fun. It's kind of fun, satisfying. Maybe is a better word, but.
It feels like drawing in a sense, right?
And
Like
I've
it's
also
quick.
always loved paintings where there's like the whole surface is worked.
Like
Kind of like
Cézanne, perhaps.
impressionist paintings where
Yes.
they're like in a Van Gogh, like I guess that's post-impressionism, but whatever. Like in a Van Gogh or a Monet painting where there's little brushstrokes over the whole surface. I love that. That's very satisfying. And even like a lot of times you'll see a painting where there's like they haven't painted the corners are kind of left white or something. Like sometimes and I love not to pick on Joan Mitchell because I love her paintings, but sometimes her paintings are like this, like there's a lot of brushwork, but then like the edges or the corners are still white. I hate that. I hate seeing that. I want to see the brushstrokes. I don't know why this is, but I love seeing like the whole surface worked.
I never thought about your work in the context of the Impressionists until this moment, but
Well,
now,
it's something that's been coming up and it
yeah.
drives some of my friends crazy because because in this work that I've been working on, the kind of fuzzy line paintings, they kind of look like reflections sometimes, which is a huge thing in impressionism. In impressionism sometimes almost the whole painting is like reflected in water, like will be what's the image in water. Um and also there's a lot of white in these paintings, which is a big impressionist thing too, kind of the brush strokes. Also, the paintings have also come to take recently all these kind of nature references, which is a totally new thing in my work too. Sometimes, I mean, they don't really look like landscapes, but even like the atmospheric quality of the blurriness is kind of like a nature thing. And they have lots of greens and browns in them. And also, like the brushstrokes themselves are often kind of like a skin, like a
Hmm.
butterfly wing or like snake or like corn or some kind of like texture that's like kind of natural. So,
I don't know if do you know the painter Robert Feintuck? But we were talking about Cézanne, and he was saying that Cézanne's paintings are kind of about uncertainty.
oh yeah.
And I never
So
thought about that. I wonder
yeah.
in your
Well,
work,
also, what is it? There's that great book about de Kooning. What is it called? Doubt. I can't
I
remember.
never read
But
it.
yeah, I mean, I think this is like what you have to learn to cultivate as a painter, ideally, is unknowing,
Yes.
uncertainty. I mean, like this is something I tell young artists too. Like, if you think you're hitting it out of the park, like you're not. Like that's not the feeling you ever have when you make a good painting. You're like, I really nailed it this time. This is great. Like if I feel that way in the studio, then I get suspicious.
It seems like you're very in tune with your relationship to a painting and how you're feeling in regard to a certain
Spent a
painting.
long time doing it. I mean, it comes from practice, and that's another piece of advice too. Is you have to make a lot more paintings than you think. Like sometimes people think like they made 20 paint. I mean, it is a lot to make 20 paintings. It is, but also it's just the tip of the iceberg. Like it's so much work. It's like hundreds and hundreds of paintings to kind of like figure out who you are and what you really want to do and what you want to see and what you have to say and like. But it's exciting, like finding like a physical manifestation of like your kind of view of the world or something is like it's somehow satisfying.
It's such a
I don't know.
gift.
It's a weird kind of thing, but it like the process of figuring out it's frustrating, but it's also fun, you know. It's a fun puzzle. It's a problem.
It's the best problem I've ever had.
Yeah.
What a luxury it is too to get
Mm.
discover your true interests and and it changes too depending on where
Yeah.
you are in life. It's always fun looking back
It's
at
true. It
paintings.
really does change over time. Although some things say in my work, some things like are so persistent, which is also kind of weird
What
too.
stayed with you?
Well, there's certain things like in the drawings. Like I have thousands and thousands of drawings that go back over the years. And if you look back through them, there's like certain things that are like have always been there. It's
Hmm.
really weird. I don't know. But I think it's also like, well, I don't know. I mean, it's some people's work doesn't change in a bad way. Some people's work changes too much, like in a bad way. So there's no like answer to like uh, kind of what should what like how like some people's work changes a very small change is huge, like an Agnes Martin or something. Like a small change is huge, you know. So it's there's no real answer to it. It's just like
Then you have people
it's
like de
on
Kooning, who I
case by
think
case
changed
basis.
kind of a lot through the years. If you look at de Kooning's like 80s work, it's way different from his 60s and 70s,
Yeah, yeah,
and then
that's true.
or
Yeah.
Frank Stella or somebody really changed a lot. And I think in a
Oh
great
yeah, that's
in
true.
a,
Like a lot of artists, that's interesting too. Like a lot of artists have like two kind of like kind of like two things they do, Larry Poons or but and sometimes it's a reaction to like I feel like the process of becoming like a famous artist and like all of that like what that entails, like sometimes it's artists have a reaction to that. Like you don't want to be limited by it. I can totally understand that. Um Yeah, and I mean sometimes artists, of course, the big danger is you become successful and you just like do that thing over and over. But it's confusing because sometimes artists do the same thing over and over and it's great, like Cezanne, you know, just like paint those apples over and over again.
damn, just keep doing it, man. I know, I know. But and that's the trick is like if you achieve some success, do you know? How do you know that you're not being influenced, and how much you're being
Well,
influenced by
I
this
think one thing that's
success?
really helpful is if it happens later. I think the really dangerous thing for artists is when it happens when you're young, because you haven't like had enough time to really like become confident in in build up your studio practice and like the process of making art. If it happens too soon, like I think that influence, like dealers don't even like even when dealers are really good and they're not trying to influence you, you can't help but you can tell like what sells and what doesn't, and what they get excited about and what they don't. And it you can feel that like it feels different, and it's hard to like separate yourself from that. You have to be like pretty strong not to like bend to that kind of influence, but you have to be really careful because the you don't want to limit yourself. You have to like protect your kind of artistic.
The culture that we're in also is very, I mean, I'm a consumer. I'm not being overly critical on the culture because I'm a part of it, but there's an emphasis on making a product, right?
Yeah. Well, it's weird. It's art is like a point at which two completely different things kind of come together. Artists and business people. I mean, they couldn't be more different. It's the weirdest kind of like combination of, you know, like there are two completely different art worlds. There's the art world that's artists and art making and studios and then there's the business world. And the two need each other, but like they're so different. They have different aims, different interests, different outlooks on things. They look at the same thing in two totally different ways.
Yeah, and you feel that
It's
often.
so weird. And it's like an endless conundrum. Like there's no real answer to it. Like there's no other like when you're young, you feel like there's like different like the market, like there's like you feel like, well, there's like artists in museums and that's different from the market. But then you realize it isn't. That's how artists get into museums because they're successful in the market. And then it's the same thing. You're like, okay. So, but I mean, it's a part of, I think, being successful or like m maybe not successful is the right word, but like navigating life is to a certain extent, you just have to like accept things the way they are and then do the best you can with what exists. Like you can't really, it's, yeah, there's
I
this,
think if you cultivate a kind of awareness of it, right, that's helpful.
yeah.
Knowing,
Yeah, and don't, yeah, and I also think it's important not to like sometimes people like become like apologists or they try to like justify things. but just admit, I think the best thing to do is just kind of admit that it's an unsolvable problem and just do your best.
That's good.
You're not going to solve it. It doesn't make sense. It's not like don't try to defend rich people. Like, I mean, they're super criminals and they buy art. I don't know what to say.
We're all complicit in the system that we live
Yeah.
in.
And that doesn't mean you have to like accept it or be cool with it, but I don't know. Like there's no, but also like there's no like you're not gonna, I don't know.
But there
It's just a problem.
a lot of nuances there too. There are some collectors who just love art. They happen to have the resources they can buy art. There's other ones that want to flip stuff, and that's weird. And I
Yeah.
don't know why you get into that. And there's other, so there's like all these different kinds of
Well, the good
collectors.
thing about the kind of market turndown is it scares off those people.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah,
So
exactly, exactly. Yes,
their interest will turn elsewhere. And also I think that another thing is like if you're like um I mean it like for in my career things built very slowly, over years and years and years. And I think that was very helpful too, because I've never been the object of interest for speculators or for flippers or for people who want to take things to auction. So I think that's kind of a blessing. Like, you know, have more serious people and over the years, a lot of the people that have bought my work have been like artists, which is also really touching too. Like they'll buy it in installments or like, I mean, that's amazing.
it would be unfortunate to be in a position where you have this career going, and then somebody tries to sell something at auction. I have a friend that this happened to, and it
Yeah.
sold for a
Yeah.
very small amount, and then now he's not able to sell stuff.
There's a lot of things that no one ever warns young artists about. There's a lot of ways things can go bad. There's a lot of pitfalls and I mean it's a tricky business.
Are you basically in the studio full time now?
Yeah. I haven't worked in the last like 5 years. Well, I
That's
got laid
great.
off from my job during the pandemic and that I'd worked at for 15 years. But I guess it was kind of time. In retrospect, it was for the best.
Yeah.
But I did love that. I loved my job and I would have never quit it on my own. But the weird thing is, during the pandemic, there was like a little boom in the art market. So my work had been selling a little bit, but it started selling a little bit more. So I just never had to like look for another job. Although I'd be happy to go back to work. Um, but I just haven't had to yet. I mean, I worked my whole life. I worked from 15 to 45, and then the pandemic happened.
Got on unemployment for the first time during the pandemic.
Yeah. Well, I started taking unemployment, but then I realized I was making money, and I was like, oh wait, I
From
can't do
selling, you
like,
couldn't take it because you're selling
yeah,
paintings. That's a good problem to have. That's great.
yeah. I
That's
know it was weird. It was a weird adjustment.
that's
Yeah.
great though.
So yeah,
So you've had to sort of readjust in terms of just crafting your life around the studio, not having the job. I mean, it's good. The nice thing about having a job is that as an artist too, it can be very solitary. So if you have a job, you're working around people, you get the social
yeah.
element.
It's true. I miss the social aspect of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I yeah, I think so. I think it's much better to look at to try to set up your life where you don't expect to make money from your work. I think that's ideal. So I think it's ideal to have a job and to try to find a job that leaves you like the time and space to somehow make your work. Um, yeah. I mean, I think also like in general, like if you're trying to make money from like if you wanted to make money, it probably won't. I don't know why that is, but it I think in general that's just like if people who like really need to sell a painting, no
Oh
one's
yeah.
gonna buy it.
I've
I don't
been
know
there.
why that is.
Yeah,
It
it's
doesn't make
amazing.
any
It's true.
sense to me. I don't know. Also, another thing that I would just warn people about the market is that the market doesn't know anything. It knows absolutely nothing. It does not tell you what is good and bad art. And the evidence of this is that at every level, at every price point, you can find good, bad, and mediocre work. And so that it doesn't mean anything. If you're a smart collector, don't buy really expensive art. Like that's crazy. Like if you can tell the difference, like very few people can, but if you can, then like buy the good art that's still cheap. It's a no-brainer. Like don't wait till it goes to Gagosian. Like the crazy thing about Gagosian is people go there and they pay more for art than anyone else will ever pay for that art. Like they're buying things for the highest price it will ever be, and they know it, and they stand in line to do it. It just blows them. It blows my mind.
It's truly
Yeah,
amazing.
and they're thankful for the opportunity. So anyway, so like if you know, so if you're working in your studio and no one's showing your work and like no one's interested in it, it doesn't mean anything. If the market ignores your work, it doesn't mean anything. It means nothing. And also at the same time, like if your work is selling like crazy, it also is no guarantee that you're making good work. So don't be too like this happens too. Like artists, they get successful and they like stop saying hi to you or something. That's fine. Don't take it personally. Like and usually people's success lasts like 3 years. Like 90% of it is like 3 years. Like you can sell out a few. This is something they never warn young artists about too. Is like you can have like several sold out solo shows and still then like nothing happens. You know. So don't get too excited.
What I hear you're saying is that you should focus not on the external stuff as much as
Yeah, focus on your
yeah,
work. You can
yeah.
control, and the work is something you can control. So yeah. Or I mean, I don't know how much. Yeah, you have to give up control. The control you focus on your work is that you can give up control.
That's right. Yeah.
I don't know.
You can at least have the illusion of control there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that I think that are within your power to control in terms of focusing on good things in your life, cultivating healthy relationships and so and all this stuff
Yeah.
feeds into the studio practice.
Right, exactly. This is another good reason to have a job. You can't make art if you don't have anything to make art about. Like you have to live your life, you know. It's not like art or life. It's like it comes out. And this is also why it kind of takes time too. You have to have like experiences and then yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean ideally it's like an integral part of your life. Although I also have to say that I am kind of like obsessed. I mean, I make art all the time. I kind of make too much. Like I do it too much almost. But
But it sounds like you have to because your process is sort of like you have
yeah,
to keep this momentum going,
yeah.
right?
But like, it's difficult to like be my like to be like to be in my life.
Well, that's one thing that you got to navigate though, right? You got to, we
True.
all,
I have to be careful about that. It's true. Yeah.
I think it's probably better to err on the side of too much than too little, but then also it's quality, right? Like I guess everybody, it's such a beautiful thing. And then it's so individual in terms of one's process, what it's your relationship, your personal, just like in terms of your, any kind of development, it's highly individual.
Yeah.
Are you working big these days? Big
I
paintings?
work in two sizes. One size is 30 by 40 inches, which is like medium, and then 6 by 4 feet. And the medium paintings tend to be like a little bit more experimental, maybe. Like I can because I can make those faster and I can try out more like different ideas, kind of. Um, but the big paintings are still like not too big, so I feel like they're the another thing about the paintings is that I paint on the wall. I have all these screw holes in the wall, and I move them like up and down and turn them on their side and turn them upside down when I'm working on them, so that I can get the surface really even. Um, because like your hand tends to like work better naturally like in different parts of the canvas. So if you want the whole surface even, you've got to move the canvas around so that the canvas needs to be a size that I can like grip and swing around and like turn. So it can't be too big. But then if I need a larger painting, what I can do is I can make it in panels and then I put the panels together. So I
Ah,
can still
nice.
get each one like totally like covered in brushstrokes.
It sounds like a really physical.
It is the painting process is more physical. It's more like the drawing process is like more relaxing and kind of fun and joyful, and the painting process is more physical, but also more of like frustrating and more of like a battle. I don't know why that is, but I think one thing I've thought is that I'm thankful for both because I feel like if I didn't have one, I couldn't have the other. Like if the paintings weren't such a struggle, like maybe the drawings wouldn't come so easily, and vice versa, or something.
I suppose
I
there's
don't
yeah,
know.
there's a lot of balance. In your work and just talking to you now, I'm sort of realizing how much there is in terms of going one way, then the other way, and finding this balance.
Yeah. Yeah, they balance the paintings and drawings kind of balance each other out. Even though recently like the imagery has gotten so different in them. But there's something about the But like in a sense, the imagery is like the least important thing to me, what they look like. It's about the process of making them and yeah,
And I suppose knowing when to step away, when to,
yeah.
that's that finding a balance there, right? Of knowing when it's finished.
I mean, sometimes, something I've told some people, although no one really, I feel like this is something that does not make any sense. But to me, like when I look at the paint, the stretched gessoed canvas before I've started, to me that's like a perfect painting. Like it's the most of like an object and transcendental image that it could possibly be. Like it's just the white and the like rectangle and the everything about it is like perfect. But somehow it's not like what I want. It's like I see it like conceptually as far as like what I'm interested in painting, the blank canvas is perfect, but it's still like not right. So it's like I'm trying to like recreate something that's as good as that, but with like actually making a painting. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does make sense, and I've had that same thought. I mean, like whatever I can possibly do on this canvas is not going to be as beautiful as the perfectly
Yeah.
primed, this white, this sort of because I think in a sense it's really about possibilities.
Yeah. And at that point it's infinite possibilities.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
open.
Anything could happen.
It's like being young. You're being a kid or something. It's just
Yeah.
completely open your whole life
Yeah.
ahead of you. And the older you get, the more experience you have, but the less possibilities you have.
Right.
Those close
It's
down.
true. Although there's this very interesting image. I think about this all the time, especially since I've been sick. Is in Dostoevsky, there's this image. I think he uses it like several times, even of like someone who is in they're like in a cart um being taken from the jail to their execution. And at every point along this journey, what the part of the journey that's left is become like enlarges to become their entire life. So as they get closer and the journey gets shorter, that shorter bit gets bigger to become the fullness of their whole life at every point.
Do they have a
Um,
new life at every point then?
So it's weird. It's like because I've had to deal with the fact, like I've had to deal with the fact that I could die like over and over again over the last 5 years, and and I'm kind of like not so much at that like I've been given a like a reprieve at the moment, so like my life kind of has opened back up. But it's interesting, like even as you can feel it like kind of closing in, and a surprising amount of space opens up in that smaller timeline.
Hmm.
It's a crazy phenomenon that it's hard to like put into words.
Do you feel like time dilates in a sense?
Well, it's like it's like it's like there still is like a like there's still like an amount of kind of a quantity of possibility, but it's just like shoved into a it's like squeezed into a smaller amount of time. But I don't know. I mean, it's weird to think about like how much of people's enjoyment of life is based on this like needing to know that there's a lot more of it.
Huh. That's really good. That's really good. Yeah,
I don't
why?
know because
Yeah.
it's kind of the idea that we can like it's an illusion that there are any guarantee that you have a lot of time. Like you're just kind of basically living under an illusion, and I just like in a position where that illusion was taken away from me. But in a sense, we're all kind of in the same boat. Like all we really have is this moment, and the past and the future exist as kind of constructs in our mind. I mean, there's real consequences too, obviously, to our
Yeah.
actions. The affect the future, and the past is a real thing. But in a certain sense, also, all we really have is how we're reacting to those things in the moment. That's the most important thing. And whenever anyone tells you, and like from a moral standpoint, whenever someone tells you they're doing something based on like something kind of future gain or something, it's suspicious. It should also be like what makes sense in the moment.
I think
That's what you really owe to people is how you're treating them right now.
It's very well said.
And that's kind of what's fundamentally wrong in a sense. I mean, I don't mean to be too hard on Christianity, but like this is kind of the fundamental problem with it is that you can get away with really bad behavior based on this idea of some kind of future gain, you know. So
I think the culture in general has that problem where it doesn't
yeah,
really see things in the moment for as they are. The truth is that there's no guarantee of the next breath.
right, exactly.
There's no
Yeah.
guarantees at all. And
Yeah,
we
and
just
also I think sometimes in the work, these centered compositions are kind of like moments, like a ping. Like here I am right now, here in this moment. It's like this moment, this It's like a series of moments. This moment, and there's this moment, and there's this moment.
so that painting is basically like an articulation of your consciousness
Yeah,
in a moment.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It becomes like a physical record of a moment in time, and also like of a series of moments. Like each brushstroke is itself kind of like a moment in the making of that painting.
Just like the Dostoevsky reference. He's
Yeah.
going to a place, but each
Yeah.
stop along the way, he's experiencing a whole life. So what has your illness changed your relationship to your practice in the studio?
I mean, it's weird. In some ways, it hasn't. In some ways, my work just kind of like continued through. It just, but also it's given me like, it coincided with like stopping having a day job. Like the two things kind of happened at the same time, but were unrelated, but they happened around the same time. So in a sense, I have a lot more time to work on my art, except for like sometimes I can't because I'm too sick. But like a lot of the times, I'm not sick all the time. Like I'm a lot of the times I'm fine to work in the studio, and so I've been able to work more, and I think that's helpful. I mean, I always kind of had the feeling that um like you should make each painting kind of like as if it's the last one, as if it's the first and the last. I don't know if that makes sense, but like a lot of times when I make a painting I feel like, okay, now we're starting for real. Like here we go, like as a new start, but also you want to kind of in a sense kind of sum up everything. So I've always kind of tried to make paintings that were like, this could be it. But I think I don't know. I'm not, it's hard to say like how much it's changed. Like some people, their reaction to my work as I've gone through this is that it's surprising like how kind of unrelated it is, like how kind of peaceful it is, or something, or like how can you make a beautiful painting when you're going through this? But it's
But it sounds like you've had a realization in terms of how ephemeral life is
yeah.
and how it is really just the one moment.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's like here I am. This is my experience of the world in this moment. And that's what and then the next one is like here I am. This is my experience of the world in this moment.
It's rare to actually be in the moment. You're thinking about this next thing,
Yeah.
or you're in the past, you're in the and I've done a few meditation retreats. Do you know Vipassana? It's like a 10-day retreat. It's
Mm.
free. It's great if you get a chance to do it. It's a 10-day, totally free. I did a couple. They're called Essen Goenka. That's the tradition, but they
Mm.
set it up so anybody can do it. You come and they feed you, and you can donate afterwards if it was useful to you. But you really realize if watching the mind, really watching the mind, you realize how rare it is that you're actually just observing sensations and things as they are. You're
Yeah.
always waiting for the next moment, or you're in the past and you're having
Right.
you're fabricating some conversation that never happened that you maybe want to happen or that you
Yeah.
regret happening or whatever it is. It's just
That's true.
it's hard.
I mean, to a large extent, our mind is like what keeps us from like our mind is kind of an enemy. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know, that might be pushing it too far, but it's like I
No, I
mean,
think
it
that's
definitely
accurate.
it like it's like if you just look at it from the perspective of trying to make art, it's like your mind. A lot of times you just have to like kind of find ways to kind of trick yourself into not like listening to your mind. And a lot of this for me has been like through my body, like setting up procedures that are like physical things that I do. That's kind of what the brushstrokes are. It's like a physical thing that you can do that like keeps you from thinking. Although you still need to think some, but it's like the thinking, like the kind of like trying to have like an explanation. Like I guess maybe what I would say is the problem with our brains is that they insist on turning everything into a story, and I think that it just isn't. It life is not a story. The world is there's no story.
That's well, we love stories. We
We
thrive.
can't
We
help it. It's just what our brains do. Our
Yeah,
brains turn things into stories
yeah,
constantly. They try to make sense of things. They're like, well, this and people like the extent to which people will say things happen for a reason. I mean, but what if they did? What would that mean?
Yeah, what would that look like? What does that
Wouldn't
mean?
that even be more shocking?
I mean, what and also is like one big reason or a bunch of little reasons or what do you
Yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah,
can we get more
I know.
specific? I think we need to get more specific here.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know it's funny. It's like what people find comforting and uncomforting is like kind of shocking. Like because you'll tell people that like there's no story. There's no things don't happen for a reason. Like that there just is no reason. It's just things happen. And they're like, well, you just don't believe it. Like that's horrible. Like how could you live your life that way? Well, it's a very like it's actually very comforting because then you can let go of a lot of like things that you're worried about, you know? And that really helps you kind of like just exist in the present. Because it's these stories that they tie the present to things that don't really exist, or
Yeah.
they kind of taint the present.
That is true. When you get to this a deeper level in one's meditation practice, they call it samadhi, which is like a deep kind of concentration. And
Yeah.
then the retreat itself is set up. These retreats are like the first 3 days, you're just observing your breath, and then it's observing sensations throughout the body. And then by the end of it, you're so focused, your concentration is so focused that you're not really thinking. I mean, you still thoughts come in, whatever, but you can
Yeah.
observe those thoughts for what they are, and
Well,
they're just thoughts.
you know, it's true that all of this is very similar to my work, even though I'm not like that interested. But the thing that the way that it came into my work, I really think is through John Cage, because John Cage was so like he was very into Zen Buddhism, and I think when I was a kid, because I grew up in this very religious family, we weren't allowed to listen to popular music. Um, but I was allowed to listen to classical music. And so when I was a kid, I was like really into classical music. And there was like a radio that I could reach as a little kid and like turn the knobs. And
What would you listen to as a kid?
back then in the 80s, the radio was very different because it was before the internet and there was a lot more stuff on the radio. And for like classical music, um, there was, it was still this period post World War II where there was so many people had moved from Europe to America. So America had like amazing orchestras. We had like every city had a world class like conductor with amazing musicians, and the radio station would play like they would play live or like pre-recorded, I guess, but they would play like broadcasts from these different from like Boston and Cleveland and like all the different orchestras. And there would be commentary and they would explain to you like the conductor would explain like why he picked these pieces, and they would in a way that they wouldn't really play just in regular programming on the radio. They would play more contemporary stuff. So so as a little kid, like before, like I knew about Schoenberg before I knew about the Beatles. I knew about like Lamont Young before I knew about the Beatles. I had kind of like for me, I had this kind of fundamental understanding of art through music, of the periods of art, of like what had happened in the 20th century, and also of this as kind of a catastrophe, of kind of modernism as a catastrophe, which is how it exists in classical music, which it doesn't really exist this way in art. In art, it's kind of a triumph, but in classical music, it's very different. It's very interesting. It's very dramatic. The change that happens, how things kind of fall apart out of romanticism. And also, John Cage studied with Schoenberg, or didn't study, but he met Schoenberg in LA because everyone was in LA because of the war, or lots of people were. Stravinsky was in LA. Uh, and yeah, so and there is something to my work that where I take like the given elements and it's almost like the 12 tone system. Like I have in my mind this idea of like taking given elements and like working through them step by step and then repeating. Like sometimes in the drawings, I'll use I just use like all the colors that the pens come in, and I just go through them one after another, like things like that. It's like very deep in my psyche. That's kind of like,
There's like a musical
yeah,
component in a
yeah,
sense that you sort of see the paints as kind of as notes, perhaps.
yeah.
If there were a classical analog to your work,
Oh, I don't know. That's crazy. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to say what that is. I don't know. But another thing is that I love like the Baroque, like the
oh,
French
same.
Baroque, like
Yeah.
Rameau, like Jean-Philippe Rameau. Amazing. And I feel like the drawings have like there's something about the Baroque with this like constant unfurling, like in spirals, like coming from instead of like moving in a line, like as but in music, this is what's called the classical period, which comes after the Baroque. Things start having more forward momentum, but in the Baroque, things tend to move more like in they kind of circle back on themselves endlessly, endlessly developing, endlessly coming back in this kind of spiral. And I feel like that's kind of the structure, especially of the drawings. That's the and someone once called it the fecundity of the Baroque, this like constant state of invention. Um,
It keeps proliferating.
yeah, that's something that, and also Bach, of course, Bach is like, the greatest of the Baroque composers, but one of the greatest composers. And one of the lessons to learn from Bach, which is so interesting, is that he, during his life, was considered out of like old fashioned, and kind of like his preoccupations were like in the past and complicated and not very interesting. And like, so like,
Who
you
was
know,
popular in his day?
Telemon. Telemon was like, who also was a great composer, was, well, also the style had already started to shift to this thing called the style galant, which is like kind of like, it's similar to the Rococo in visual arts, which was a lighter, more kind of airy style, which
Frothy,
was
you
more
might say.
pleasant. And Bach was seen as like old fashioned, like so like dense and so many accidentals and like chromatic things. And
It's heavenly.
yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting how but the thing that's kind of reassuring about that is that it's very easy for art to kind of be misjudged by the time that it's in. So, if people are kind of underestimating your work, it's happened to better people than you.
Yeah. If it happened to Bach, then
Yeah.
don't worry about it.
But like I don't know, like I don't know what the paintings were like. I mean, also a weird thing about the paintings too is like nowadays they seem to have like really got influenced by kind of 50s painting too, like kind of Clifford Still and Mark Rothko and Barnett Newman,
Hmm.
and which is interesting because my generation is we were like kind of opposed to painting and kind of opposed to abstract expressionism, and so I feel like it's to me it's very surprising that my art has ended up here. It's like a
It can
mixture
continually
of
surprise you.
impressionism and abstract expressionism. What?
I love that you
It's
don't know, and
horrible.
that no, that's great. It's a sign that you're doing something right, is that you don't really know where
Yeah,
it's coming from. It's coming from all these places, then it becomes uniquely you.
yeah.
I greatly appreciate your taking the time today, and I wonder if there's anything else you'd like to add before we go.
I don't know. I just hope that some of that made some sense. I really don't know. I have a tendency to just like talk and talk and talk. And then like I do this in studio visits too. And I'm always at the end, I'm like, I wish I said about half of what I said.
But if you didn't say what you said, then the other half might not have
I know, but
the
what
half you
half?
like. What half exactly? Exactly.
So yeah. But if anyone has the patience to listen to all of that, I commend them.
They say that doctors in med school only only half of what they learn will be useful later in life,
Oh
years, but
wow.
they don't know what half.
Yeah. Oh.
No, I think people will definitely get a lot from this, and I want to thank you again for your time.
Well, happy to do it. Good to talk to you.
Great to talk to you too.